Did you know you have the power to transform your health and your life? After years of suffering with undiagnosed autoimmune symptoms, I found myself on an endless loop of expensive supplements, broken promises, and drive-through meals. I was a busy working mom struggling with chronic pain. I could no longer keep up with life until I decided to take my health into my own hands. I discovered the healing power of whole foods and incorporated a healthy lifestyle that is simple, affordable, and maintainable even when life gets busy. With easy, whole food meal prep, meal planning, and wellness strategies, I healed my autoimmune symptoms, regained my energy, and lost 30 pounds along the way. I discovered I had the power to change my life, and I know you have that power too. Whether you're looking to reduce inflammation, lose weight, or optimize your health, this is it. Get ready to discover the vibrant life you deserve with the Prepared for Wellness podcast. I'm Ashley Cavolo, and I can't wait to join you on this journey. Deborah, I am so happy to have you on the podcast today. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me as a guest as well.
Yeah, thank you for being here. So you have created the Project You program, and I'm just curious, how did you come up with this program?
Well, there's a big story that sits behind it. So going back to my 29th birthday is actually when I look back as the sort of trigger point for everything actually starting to go wrong in my life. I got in a bit of a panic because I hit 29 and I realized I was only a year off turning 30, and there were all of these things that I realized that I really wanted to achieve by the time I was 30. So I was thinking about things like find the right man, get married, maybe be starting a family soon, buy the house, move on with my career, earn a certain amount of money. So I had all of these big sort of life ambitions that I wanted to achieve for myself. And I realized that I was nowhere near achieving any of them by the date that I had thought I would, which was my 30th birthday. And so that set off for me a spiral of kind of panicked and bad decisions for myself. And also during that period of time, I was also involved in a car crash that left me with a lot of physical problems. So I was in a lot of pain. I couldn't sleep because of the pain. There's no route for me to get better. Although I was walking, I couldn't walk very far or for very long or stand up for very long. And so that was then impacting all of the rest of my life in terms of how I was coping. So stress at work became heightened because of the pain. My stresses around where I was in life became heightened because of the pain and my coping mechanisms, etc. And so I spiraled downward quite badly, making a few bad decisions, stayed in the wrong relationship for myself, took a turn in my career, took a job that wasn't the right one for me. And to cut a not so nice story short, by the time I sort of reached my worst place, I ended up signed off work due to stress and anxiety. I had been suffering lots of panic attacks. I was separated and headed for divorce from the man who became my husband, who was the relationship that was the wrong one. My physical health was really bad. I couldn't exercise. I was still in all this pain, not sleeping very well. And my mental health was in a bad place as well because of where I had got to. And so I had to really stop and think about how I was going to come out of this bad place. So I had to start with looking at how am I going to manage my stresses and my mental health? What is the plan I'm going to go about for my physical health? And what am I going to do about my career here? And how am I going to move forwards with that? And then also, and then in time, relationship. And so because at work, I had been working in the field of project management, and I really loved project management. And so what I decided to do was bring the processes from my project management work into my personal life. So take a very structured methodology-based approach So a process-driven approach to what I was going to do to get myself out of this sort of really dark place that I was in. So I started to create a plan and come up with a proper project plan of how I was going to go about getting out of it. And gradually, bit by bit, I was bringing new things in, and doing things for myself and making improvements and trying things. And everything actually started to come together for me then. And so I created my own business then, set up a project management consultancy business, and that was about 10 years ago now. And so that progressed really well. My physical health got loads better. I learned how to manage my stresses and my anxiety, and I found the right man and since got married. So that's great. So I'm married the second time around now. And then I think really for me, when we got to the pandemic and the lockdown, as probably with many people, it was a bit of a time of reflection and just where am I at in life and what's going on and everything. And that was the point in time where I said, do you know what? I don't know whether I want to keep on doing this corporate project management work for the rest of my working years. I want to do something different. I want to give more back to people. And so then I started to look at taking the methodology that I had put together for myself personally for what I could do in my life and go, well, what can I do with this to help people? And really that was where the idea came from, about putting together a process that could be taught or shared with anybody who could then use it for their own changes in life, whether that be around relationships or health or work, etc. So that is the Project You process that I now use. And so I've made a shift in my career and my business to work with individuals and to help them to get the changes they want in life.
I love this story. This is amazing. I find it so interesting that people, when we're in the darkest time, we somehow find a way to use our resources to you all of a sudden realize you have to pull yourself out of there somehow, some way, figure it out. And I relate to that so much. So I just find it amazing. And so I'm really curious to know what is the process that you came up with, because you could have gone in so many directions with this. And I'm just wondering what you came up with. I think this is pretty amazing. So.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so I think, and you're right, I wholeheartedly agree. Where do we get that energy from when we're in that dark place? And I think we all have it somewhere in us. We have to get to a point, I think, where the pain is the pain of doing something new, or the fear of doing something new and different, becomes less than the pain of staying where you are. And it's that balance. At some point the scales tip and you go, no more, and I need to get past that hurdle and start something different. So it's a really interesting point in life, I think, and a lot of people probably do find they've hit it at certain points. But to go back to your question, so the process I worked through, so in the corporate world, so there was two factors really about the corporate world that I found really interesting to bring to my personal life around project management. So one is that there's only really probably three main methodologies that are used to deliver projects in the corporate world. And I've worked in retail, in telecoms, in the charity sector, on government projects, manufacturing, you name it. You look across all these different kinds of organizations, all different kinds of projects, whether they're engineering projects, technology, marketing, people projects. There's only a few methodologies that are used, and they're very, very similar. You can move around and you can go in and you can pick up a different project and you understand the structure of it. So that was one thing. And the second overarching factor for me is that projects always deliver. So I've delivered hundreds, if not thousands, of projects on behalf of different companies, and they always get to their end point. They get to the goal. That's not to say there aren't curveballs and, difficult points in them. And sometimes they do alter direction slightly, but they always get to where they wanted to go. And so that was what I wanted to bring in. So I looked at these kind of three main methodologies that are used. And I started going, well, which bits am I using when I do this personally myself? So, because obviously I was just using the idea or the concept of a structure rather than writing out the whole methodology and then applying it. And so I had to retrospectively look back and think, how am I doing it? And so there's bits of different types of methodology. So both agile methodologies and waterfall ones, if that means anything to you. But so there's 6 steps in my process, essentially. So step 1 is self-discovery, and that's where we kind of go and have a look at what is behind what you want to do. What are the reasons for it? Where has it come from? And what has been holding somebody back specifically? And it's a really good opportunity to just explore where there might be, for example, self-limiting beliefs that are stopping somebody from getting where they want to go, but also really having a good focus on, well, what's the sort of person do you want to be, and where are you trying to get to in the future, and really thinking about future you and what you want that to look like. And then it goes into step 2 of setting goals in a really specific way that will then support you on the journey forward as you progress through your project delivery. In step 3, it's then about breaking the goals down. So we take each goal one by one, and then I work with clients on creating lists of different things. So that might be things like, what actions are you going to take? What resources are you going to need? What sort of help are you going to have to reach out for? What learning are you going to need to do? What are the tasks that need to be done in order to get you towards this goal? And so it's a bit of a kind of brain dump, get everything down. And then moving from that brain dump, it's about putting some order around it. And so typically, depending on the nature of where we're going and the sort of change that somebody wants to put in place, I'll be looking at, what is your daily routine and what do we need to alter, and where are we going to find time in that to do the things we want to do? What is your weekly routine? And then what is a plan for the coming weeks and months that we can work through in a way that's going to fit with your schedule and fit with everything else that's going on in life, right? Because you can never dedicate yourself fully to one thing. There's family and fun and work and other things to be done. And so it's about coming up with a plan that's really workable with all of those other commitments that are going on in life. And then step 5 is a real playback to that project management approach, which is about risk management. So it's just stopping and having a think through, what are the things that are likely to slow you down or stop you in getting towards the goals that you want? And everybody has some risks, even if they don't, if they're not aware of them. So, for example, the most basic risk that most of us will carry when we're trying to put some change in place in our life would be around falling off the wagon with it, around giving up, around losing motivation, getting distracted. We all know what that feels like. We've all had something that we've set out to do and at some point maybe not seen it through properly, or we all know somebody who said, yeah, I'm gonna lose weight, get a new job, whatever it is, and then they don't get on and do it. And so it's about thinking through what is likely to trigger that happening. Let's think through that before it happens, and let's come up with some strategies. What are we going to do to minimize it, and what are we going to do if it happens to steer you back on course? And then finally, step 6 is the reflect step, and it's actually a repeating step that I use with people to reflect on where they're at so far, what have they done, what have they achieved. Let's celebrate some successes and acknowledge actually what's been done so far. And then also, what have you learned? So if things didn't quite go to plan, is that because we need to adjust the plan, or is it just that there was a one-off thing that happened and we carry on as we were? Have you learned that there's something new that needs to be added into the plan that you haven't thought of before, because now you've started working through it, you understand more. And so this reflect process actually just kind of allows you to refocus on your goal, steer you back on track, and make sure that you keep heading in the right direction until you get to actually completing that goal. So that's it, kind of nutshell overview.
That's amazing. It really is, digging deep, but you also are there to guide them along the way, which is huge, because sometimes going it alone is difficult, and it's nice to be able to reflect on things to somebody else and have somebody, looking from the outside in, as well. So I find that really amazing. How long would you say it takes somebody to get through the process? I'm sure it depends on the person and the situation and all of that, but do you have a time frame for your program that people usually get through?
Yeah, I mean, like you say, it depends on the person and the goal that they're headed for. If they were looking to run a half marathon in 6 weeks' time, then it's 6 weeks.
Yeah.
What I have found with the clients that I've worked with, that is often there's more than one goal, and maybe they didn't acknowledge that there was more than one goal until we did that first step, and they realized there might be a main goal, but actually sitting behind it, sometimes there's other things around improving self-esteem or self-confidence, for example, and we do set some goals around that sort of thing. And so the time frame typically that I see an overall full result with them is about 6 months, but we feel like we're making progress from fairly early on in, because once you get through that first step in the 6-step process, then people really feel like they're gathering momentum, and they're starting to feel that motivation, and they're understanding how a process can really support them in moving forwards, and so they're gaining that confidence. So there's changes happening for my clients from fairly early on, but it's tended to be a sort of probably 4 to 6 month period where we really see the full changes come about. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I find it so interesting that it tends to follow the same progression as, a change in the health lifestyle. Even within 2 weeks, from beginning, we start to feel different. We notice slight changes, and that can completely shift your mindset, and it sets you off on the right path from the get-go. So
and
it seems to be,
because when you make your first change towards something, and particularly with health, you can feel this yourself. As soon as you feel that you've done something and it's worked for you, that inspires you, that motivates you, and that fires you up to do the next thing. And sometimes I find working with people, we'll start with really small steps, because that's all they're ready to do at that point. And that's all they feel comfortable doing. It's only when you get through the small steps, then you're ready to take on those bigger commitments and those bigger challenges. And there is a path towards that. It doesn't have to be the full jump, both feet all in at once.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, so what types of things do people come to you for? Is it usually very specific, or do you ever see people coming to you for, say, health changes, or they just want balance? What types of things do you see?
So my clients have typically come for me for a bit of a range of things, to be honest. They've got one bigger goal, which is going to be something like, it might be career change, or for example, like moving somewhere new, moving to a different country. I've had, but actually there's other things as well when we explore, that they might be saying, oh, actually, I feel a bit down about the way that I look, or actually, I'm not sure that my health is so great. So there's some things that they want to do about putting in place a healthier lifestyle, better routines around things, and maybe feeling better about themselves, really is where that's driven from. And then often some stuff around communication improvement, self-esteem, confidence. So sometimes there's some secondary goals that are a little bit quieter and not, you know, then it's not going to be as out there as the big new job, but actually the underlying things are what's needed to support them in getting forward with the career change or the move of house or whatever it is. So it does encompass a range. And probably, as we all know ourselves, and certainly from my own story, whilst I was probably really focused on getting my business off the ground, and ultimately I did want to be in a relationship, without sorting out the health things that were sitting underlying the reason why I'd got so sick, I wasn't going to be able to do those things. And without building up my own self-esteem and my own self-confidence to move forwards, I wasn't going to be able to build the business that I wanted, and I wasn't going to go and find a good relationship with a decent man, and you know, for that to move forward in a good and healthy way. So actually, we often have to look inside first and do that work and on our own health and well-being before we're ready to tackle those bigger things. But then what I find is that we can start with the small things towards the big goals, and then we're looking at those foundational pieces at the same time, and so it tends to move forward in this really lovely way together.
Yeah, it really connects with, you know, what I teach people, and you find out what your reasons are for wanting to change, what's holding you back, and it's very similar, you know. And I teach people, you know, we have to figure out really what's holding you back, what is getting in the way, how we move forward from there, dig deep. And even with holistic wellness, you know, you're looking for the root cause, and it's the same way when you're dealing with life itself. You know, what is the root cause of where we are, why we're stuck. So really figuring out that root cause to move forward is key. And I see that in what you're talking about here, and it all connects. It's really quite amazing. So I'm just curious, how do you manage your health, your wellness, your balance in everyday life? What do you do to manage stress and the craziness of the world these days?
And there's a lot of craziness, right? So
there sure is.
We need to do that. So I have built up over the years a number of things that work really well for me, and it's definitely taken me some time to work out the things that have worked for me versus those that haven't. But the things that are really important for me are my morning routine. So I love my morning routine. So I get up early. The first thing I do is meditation. So anywhere between maybe 10 and 25 minutes, depending how long I've got. I normally listen to a guided meditation. I then do breathing exercises. So Wim Hof breathing. I'm sure you're probably aware of Wim Hof breathing. I find that a lovely way to make sure that I'm both woken up and relaxed. And then beyond that, I'll then normally go to doing some exercise. So quite often that starts with an early walk outdoors, because early sunlight is really good for my sleep patterns later on in the day. So that may just be a kind of 10-minute walk, or it might be half an hour, depending, like I say, how much time I've got. And then often for me, it will be either a workout at home, or I'll go to the gym and work out. If I'm at the gym, after I've worked out, then I'll be going for a sauna. So I try and make sure that I get into the sauna 3 or 4 times a week, because I know that that's really good for cleaning out toxins. It's good for my long-term cardiovascular health, etc. And then I follow that, just to hark back to the Wim Hof element, I follow that with a cold shower. So I'll always not always a full cold shower, but I'll always end my shower with a cold minute or two to make sure I get that shock. It's good for my skin, again, good for the cardiovascular system, and it's good for my resilience in pushing myself forward to remind myself that I can do the hard things. So I try and start my day with those things, and like I say, I flex the amount of time that I spend on them, but it's really important for me to do those things. And then I do. I sometimes do some breathing exercises in the evening, and that helps me just with unwinding. I have a Shakti mat at home. Do you know what Shakti mats are? Yeah. So sometimes 20 minutes on the Shakti mat in the evening, if I feel quite wound up from the day, that's a really good way to unwind. There's a light bit of breathing exercises just as I get into bed, actually, to calm down. I have a gratitude practice. So just before I kind of go to sleep, I try and come up with 3 things for the day that I'm thankful for, just to remind myself, even if it's been a hard day, there's still lots of good things in this world and in life. And then I think outside of that is probably really around my diet. So I try and do intermittent fasting. I aim for 6 days a week, 7 days a week. I probably achieve 5 most days of the week. So for me, that means that I'm only eating in about a sort of 6 or 7 hour window during the day, which typically would be between 12 and 6 or 7. So no breakfast. I minimize how much wheat I eat. I try not to eat sugary food. So if I was doing it perfectly, I'd say no wheat, no sugar, no breakfast. But there are exceptions which I allow myself. So yeah, so that tends to be the things that I do to try and look after my well-being and my health. And I'm in way better place than I was certainly 10 years ago when I was in that kind of really dark place. My physical health's really good. I can walk as long as I want and stand up as long as I want and do all the exercise at the gym and everything. So it's also really important to me because I know how awful it feels when I can't do that. And so I really appreciate the physical health that I do now have. And so it's something I don't take for granted, and I take really seriously as well. There's an attitude towards it which makes me almost, I think I can probably say I'm glad that happened to me. It's taken me a long time to be able to say I'm glad that car accident and things happened to me, but the difference it makes to me now and how focused I am on looking after my health, I don't believe I would be in this place if it wasn't for having gone to the darker place first. So it does really mean a lot to me to look after my health.
Yeah. And I feel the same way. There's no chance of going back. Once you move forward, you know how good it feels, like you said. So you just keep moving forward, and you begin to look for other ways, to improve even further. And you open your mind to things you never knew existed, you never thought of, so it's pretty amazing. And your story is so inspirational, and I just think it's wonderful. So thank you so much for coming on. I really do appreciate it. You have an amazing story. Yeah. So how can people connect with you?
So they can find me on Instagram. I am the Deborah Southgate, or they can go to my website at deborahsouthgate.com, and I have a free online training course, a 4-part course there, if people would like to find out a bit more about what I do and how I work.
Great. Well, thank you, Deborah. It was so wonderful talking with you, and I'm so glad to have met you. And hopefully now we're lifelong friends, and we can continue connecting with more and more people, sharing stories and inspiration. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I hope this episode helped you in your health journey, and just maybe you learned something new. If you loved this episode, please leave a review. When you do, you are helping this podcast reach others around the world. Visit my website, preparedforwellness.com, to view my coaching offers, free recipes, and so much more. Don't forget to grab your free gift while you're there. Follow me on Instagram at Prepared for Wellness and join my VIP Facebook group, Prepared for Wellness Community. Don't miss out on the fun and special announcements.